Welcome back to Midday. We are down at the Kamloops Museum this afternoon with the curator of the Kamloops Museum, Dennis Oman. Great to have you back.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've had the luxury of coming down here a few times and checking out all the great exhibits going on. No different today. We're talking about an exhibit that's been here for about a couple of weeks now. It's called A Storied Land, and it sort of tells all about the Secwepemc people and their presence in this region for the past several hundreds of years.
That's right. That's exactly
lots of great artifacts. Like, we're standing in front of this amazing dugout canoe here. Tell me a little bit about what this exhibit represents, what people will learn if they come down.
A Storied Land is about the Secwepemc culture as it relates to the landscape in which they live, as you mentioned. And we look at this through the idea of a cultural landscape. And essentially what it comes down to is we all live in a cultural landscape, and there are different kinds of cultural landscapes. An ornamental garden is one kind. An adaptive landscape, say where you rice paddies in a field, or places where people have altered the landscape for agricultural purposes. That's a different kind of cultured landscape. For the Secwepemc, their landscape was an associative cultured landscape. In other words, landscape features in the area in which they lived had associations that applied directly to their myths and legends and stories that they told. So the whole landscape for the Secwepemc had a lot of significance.
What would you say that the Secwepemc people are best known for? What was their mark that they left here? And of course, still existing today, but how long have they been around?
Indigenous people have lived in the area for thousands and thousands of years, but when the culture emerged that we call the Secwepemc, when that actual culture emerged, nobody's too sure, but we're probably talking a couple of thousand years. Now, there were Indigenous people living in the area before that, but whether they were known as the Secwepemc or whether they called themselves the Secwepemc, we don't know for sure. So the Secwepemc horizon is, probably around 2,000 years or so.
And their territory is vast, stretching from the Rocky Mountains in the east all the way to the Fraser River at the Arrow Lakes in the south. It's a huge land base.
It is, yeah. It's massive, and there's many different kinds of landscapes within that area. There's all the way to the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, all the way down south to the Lakes region, as you mentioned. It encompasses the drier landscape of the interior. So, they had a very varied landscape, and they had a varied culture to accommodate their place within the landscape.
How did the Kamloops Museum come to collect and gather all of these artifacts? I know they live here full time. They're on display now, but there's just such a varied range of different artifacts people can see. How did they come to be collected?
It's just over the years, over decades, really. The museum has been around since the early 30s, or actually mid 30s, and material has been coming in over the years. And every now and then we get something of special significance, like this dugout canoe. We've always been getting baskets. The baskets are usually donated by people of European descent, white people who've come by them over the years. Very often they're purchased from Secwepemc people or Lillooet people in the 30s and 40s. And it's just been a slow, steady accumulation of artifacts.
Do you know the story behind this dugout canoe? It looks like it's been around for a while because there's a portion of it at the end that's missing a little bit of the floor area, but it looks like it's pretty old. It
is quite old, and the only thing, we don't know too much about it. What makes it so special is it's very finely worked. The walls are quite thin. The wood is quite thin all the way around, so it would have been quite light and maneuverable. Unfortunately, we don't know too much about it. There might be some documentation about it existing somewhere, but we haven't come across that just yet. Are there any artifacts in this exhibit that you would like to tell us a little bit about? We have a stone mask that's it's quite iconic. It's the image that we use to advertise this show, and it's really quite striking. It's beautifully carved. It has traces of ochre on it, so it was decorated at some point. It was found during a building excavation on Lawrence Street in 1912. Now, of course, we don't quite know what the use was for, and we don't quite know how old it is, but it's probably of great age, and it's exceptionally beautiful. It might represent the moon. It almost certainly had a ceremonial significance. but it's just a beautiful object in its own right.
It would be true to say sometimes the place that you live, you know very little about in terms of the history, and I think this applies to this situation with this exhibit. The Secwepemc people around for so many hundreds of years, a lot of people don't really know the history, and this is a great opportunity for those people to come down.
Yes, absolutely. If this exhibit will tell them the story of the Secwepemc and the interior Salish language group, which encompasses other peoples in the region. It tells a story of how they interacted with the landscape and how the landscape gave rise to their own unique culture and identity.
Fantastic. Is there anything else you'd like to add about this exhibit? I know it's running right through the summer, so that gives lots of people lots of time.
That's right. Yeah, it's running until August 30th. Just come on down. We have a number of activities associated with this exhibit. You can come down to the museum and get a brochure detailing those, or visit our website, and yeah, please come on down and participate in some of the activities. And
what a great time. Kids are on summer holidays. What better time to teach them a little bit about the history of the region, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you for being here today, Dennis.
Thank you so much.
Much appreciated for you having us back. A Storied Land, this exhibit is running from now through until the end of August, so lots of time to come down and check it out. We will be back in 2 minutes with more Midday. Stay with us.
Is that what you really want? I can't see that got red.